My name is Olivia. At 25, the quiet rhythm of my past life feels like a distant memory. I live with my dad, James, in a small town where life moves at a slow pace and the faces are familiar. My mom is merely a whisper in the wind now, a bittersweet ache in my heart. She passed away from an illness when I was young, leaving dad and me to navigate life together. He took on the roles of both mother and father, his love serving as my rock. With his gentle smile and tired eyes, he has always been my anchor, shielding me from life's harsh realities and nurturing a warm and secure haven in our modest home. He filled my childhood with bedtime stories, shared memories of my mom, and the comforting scent of freshly baked apple pie. Carrying the weight of his own grief with quiet dignity, he ensured my childhood was swaddled in love and security. As time passed, I grew restless. When I turned 18, the world called me, and I left home for college. It was a significant transition, excitement intertwined with a deep-seated nervousness. I was a small-town girl stepping into a vast, unknown world. Leaving my dad's home was bittersweet, trading the safety of his embrace for the uncertainties of dorm life. College emerged as a whirlwind of new experiences, vivid colors, and unfamiliar sounds. I walked through bustling hallways, forged friendships with individuals from diverse backgrounds, and reveled in newfound freedoms. Yet, despite all this excitement, there lingered a deep ache of longing in my heart for the familiar quiet evenings spent with Dad. Soon, everything changed. It was a day that shattered my innocence, a day that forced me to confront feelings of sadness and confusion, feelings I wasn't prepared for. That was the day I met him. Before that moment, my life had been simple and straightforward, but now I found myself on the precipice of love, betrayal, and heartbreak. The shift felt monumental, drawing me into uncharted territory. My college friends, bursting with worldly experiences and carefree attitudes, stood in stark contrast to my sheltered upbringing. They embraced life with a boldness that both intrigued and intimidated me. As I was drawn into their world, my life began to spiral in unexpected directions. I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, grappling with desires that were both thrilling and terrifying. The girl who had left home mere months ago was slowly fading. I was evolving into a woman navigating the intricate waters of adulthood. Our dorm room, nestled amidst tall university buildings and busy walkways, became a space for laughter, late-night conversations, and countless stories. Initially, I found myself on the fringes of my roommates' vibrant circle. Their activities felt foreign, and I struggled to find my place. However, as time went on, the atmosphere transformed. I began to feel more at home. On weekend nights, our room would be alive with the presence of friends decked out in colorful outfits, their faces glowing with bright makeup, and the air filled with the pulsating sounds of music from their phones. Their infectious energy gradually enveloped me, helping me shed the remnants of my old self and embrace this new chapter. Their activities initially felt strange to me, and I wasn't quite sure how to fit in. However, as time went on, I found myself enjoying them more and more. On weekend nights, our dorm room would be filled with people. My friends donned trendy clothes, applied their makeup, and chatted excitedly about parties and experiences. Their enthusiasm piqued my curiosity. I wanted to be a part of it. Initially, I was simply intrigued, but soon my desire grew to experience this vibrant world for myself. I vividly remember my first night at a bar with them. The noise, the lights, the music, and the energetic crowd overwhelmed my senses. I felt a mix of excitement and confusion as I navigated this new environment. A friend offered me a cocktail, and I nervously accepted a sip. It tasted bitter. Yet, those nights became a ritual. I transitioned from being a passive observer to an active participant, dancing and laughing with my friends. The atmosphere was electric, and I embraced the thrill of it all, even as uncertainty lingered. As I attempted to drink more confidently, I found myself reminiscing about our late-night walks back to the dorm, giggling over the amusing moments of the evening. It was liberating, an exhilarating departure from the naive girl who had entered college filled with insecurities. I had shattered the confines of my sheltered upbringing, crossing boundaries I never imagined I would. Through these nights, I began to grasp the complexities of love, an elusive concept that had once felt distant. One evening at a classmate's birthday party, I met someone new. His captivating eyes and warm smile ignited a flutter of attraction I had never felt before. We soon exchanged messages, sharing personal stories and dreams for the future. Love, or at least the spark of it, bloomed unexpectedly within me. I succumbed to the enchantment, relishing the unfamiliar feelings it stirred. The first year of university spiraled by in a whirlwind of vibrant activity. I developed a crush that felt momentous, one that breathed fresh air into my life. I reflected on how much I had transformed. From a shy girl content to study, I evolved into someone eager for adventure, discovering new passions like enjoying wine and indulging in music. By the end of that year, I was no longer the same timid girl who had left home. As summer rolled in, I felt the absence of laughter, late-night conversations, and all the joyful moments with my roommates. The dorm felt desolate and quiet in their absence, a stark contrast to the life I had grown accustomed to. Returning home felt like stepping into another world. I pushed open the familiar door to find my dad, James, completely absorbed in a television show. A playful thought crossed my mind: why not surprise him? With a mischievous grin, I quietly tiptoed across the room, my footsteps barely making a sound. Just as I was about to give him a friendly pat on the shoulder, he looked up, eyes widening in surprise. Before I could say a word, he grabbed my hand and pulled me into a tight hug. "Sneaking up on me, huh?" he exclaimed playfully, and we both laughed, our joy filling the quiet house. Amid our laughter, I couldn't help but ask, "But how did you know it was me?" He replied with a sly grin, "Back home without a word?" Just as I was about to pat him on the back, a look of surprise crossed his face. Before I could say anything, he took my hand and pulled me into a warm hug. Our laughter echoed through the empty house, making it feel alive again. Still chuckling, I asked, "But how did you know it was me?" Dad pointed to the large mirror on the wall opposite the TV. My cheeks flushed as I realized every move I made had been reflected in its surface. The mirth faded, leaving behind a comforting warmth. Dad's eyes crinkled with years of smiles, and the familiar affection that had always anchored me filled the room. "Let me grab my suitcase," I announced, eager to reclaim my old room and settle into the comfort of home. Dad winked, then dragged my suitcase down the hall. A wave of nostalgia washed over me. Every corner of the house held a memory, a whisper of laughter, and a blend of joy and sorrow. This place was a sanctuary, built on my dad's unwavering love, a love that permeated every brick and board. That evening, the dining table became our stage as I recounted my first year of college life, sharing the highs and lows, the embarrassing moments, and the lessons learned. Dad was the perfect audience, his attentive silence punctuated by laughter and the occasional shake of his head. In those moments, when he simply watched me, I felt a quiet pride radiating from him, and it touched my heart deeply. I realized then that I was seeing him with fresh eyes. Approaching 50, he carried his age with remarkable grace. His commitment to fitness and the physical demands of his job had shaped his body into one of strength and vitality. The tank top he wore accentuated his lean muscles, a stark contrast to the softer physiques of his peers. I had never perceived him this way before: strong, resilient, quietly confident. Admiration washed over me, intertwined with a profound appreciation for all the sacrifices he made to give me the life I had. The warmth of that realization and the comforting familiarity of home filled me with gratitude. I found myself staring at him, my gaze lingering longer than necessary, as my mind swirled in a chaotic mess. Something about my dad's quiet confidence and strength captivated me. Suddenly, his deep voice snapped me out of my thoughts. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, a hint of surprise in his tone. I smiled nervously and shook my head. "Oh, nothing," I replied quickly. He raised an eyebrow, but smiled back knowingly. "You've only been away for a year, but you've changed a lot," he said warmly. I nodded, a soft laugh escaping me. "Well, I'm growing up, Dad," I said, trying to keep the mood light. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the warmth of our connection and the bond we shared, grateful for the time we had together. "You've only been away for a year, but you've changed a lot," he said warmly. I nodded, laughing softly. "Well, I'm growing up, Dad," I replied, striving to maintain a light mood as I lay in bed. Yet, my mind was restless, flooded with images of my father, his strength, his dedication, how he carried himself. These thoughts confused and unsettled me. No matter how hard I tried to push them aside, they clung to me, even as I closed my eyes. The following day, the summer sun blazed down, making the house feel sweltering. I was in the living room, positioned in front of a fan that offered little relief. The air felt thick and oppressive, and I was drenched in sweat. Dad had left early that morning to run some errands, and I knew he wouldn't be home for a while. The hours dragged on, the silence growing heavier as the heat became unbearable. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I decided to cool off in the bathroom. Stepping into the shower, I let the cool water wash over me, cleansing away the heat and frustration that clung to my skin. Each drop felt refreshing, and for a moment, I allowed myself to relax. I thought of my father working diligently in the yard, admiring his concentration and strength. Since starting college, something inside me had shifted. I found myself appreciating him more than I ever had. Suddenly, an intense feeling washed over me, as if someone were watching. I opened my eyes to see Dad standing in the doorway, having returned earlier than expected. He peered through the narrow space where the door was half closed. His expression was unreadable, surprise mingled with confusion. The air felt thick with tension, neither of us spoke. The sound of the running water turned deafening, heightening the silence between us. My heart raced, and I found myself frozen, unable to move or break the quiet. It felt as if time had slowed to a crawl, seconds stretching out before us. In that moment, an unspoken understanding flickered between us. "Dad, you're back," I finally managed to say. James jumped, as if jolted from a dream. Confusion clouded his eyes, and he blinked rapidly, his hand trembling as he gripped the strap of his bag. "I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice uneven. "I didn't think you'd stop mid-sentence." He quickly averted his gaze, a flush spreading across his cheeks, while I felt the weight of the moment settle heavily around us. There we stood, frozen, a thick, humid air wrapped around us, an ironic reminder of the tension simmering just beneath the surface. As I clenched my hands by my sides, the cool water dripped from my fingertips, accentuating the tumult of emotion swirling within me. A faint breeze moved through the half-open window, sending a shiver down my spine. My eyes met his for a brief moment before he looked away, as if instantly trying to articulate something unspoken, yet the words remained lost in the stillness. He turned abruptly and left the room, heading to the living room as if he were fleeing from something daunting. I remained in the bathroom, feeling a wave of nausea wash over me as my heart raced, replaying the moment we had just shared. After a few moments to gather myself, I wrapped a towel tightly around my damp skin and stepped out into the stifling heat of the afternoon. The steam from my shower hung in the air, mingling with the oppressive warmth. As I entered the living room, a sudden weight filled my chest at the sight of him. James sat on the couch, his shirt damp and clinging to his broad shoulders, which rose and fell with each strained breath. Our eyes locked for a fleeting second, and I noticed the redness in his eyes, a tumult of emotion swirling within them before he quickly averted his gaze, as if the mere act of connecting with me was overwhelming. I paused at the doorway, a newfound boldness coursing through me, different from the innocence I once embodied. Something about this moment felt electric, impossible to ignore. A soft smile graced my lips as I took deliberate steps toward him, each one heightening the palpable tension that enveloped the room. I took a seat beside him, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from his body, his breath brushing lightly against my cheek, sparking a shiver that traveled through me. "Did you see everything just now?" I asked, my voice low and laced with a strange mixture of vulnerability and mischief. The air felt charged. With every heartbeat, I sensed the weight of reality pressing around us. James's response was immediate, his usually warm brown eyes now glinting with an intensity that caught me off guard. His expression faltered, his relaxed demeanor shifting to one of tension, as if battling an internal conflict. Despite my attempts to appear unaffected, I saw the strain in him. He stammered, Dad, it's not." His hands trembled as he clutched his shirt, as though trying to contain mounting emotions. I could almost feel the turmoil raging inside him, the urge to shield himself from whatever was unfolding between us. "Don't avoid me," I urged softly, locking my gaze with his. In that moment, time seemed to suspend, the invisible barrier separating right from wrong loomed large and taunting in the space between us. Finally, James took a deep breath, his hands trembling as they found my shoulders. "This is weird," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper, more to himself than to me. Yet, I wasn't about to let him retreat into uncertainty. An intoxicating sense of courage swelled within me as our eyes met once more, his uncertainty mingling with a flicker of hope. I couldn't hold back, I reached up to cup his face, pulling him closer. With a gentle kiss pressed against his trembling lips, a rush of surprise coursed through him, and for a fleeting moment, he stiffened. But his resistance faded just as quickly as it came. I felt his lips respond tentatively at first, and in that breathless exchange, the boundaries between us began to dissolve, igniting an undeniable connection that neither of us could ignore. I felt his lips respond, tentative at first, then transforming into something more passionate. Our breaths mingled, and in that instant, the invisible barrier between us dissolved. James's hesitation vanished completely as he wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into a fierce embrace. I could feel his heart racing against my chest, quickening with every heartbeat. We were so immersed in our shared moment that the outside world faded away. All that mattered was each other and the intense sensations enveloping us. "This isn't," he whispered against my skin, but I didn't respond. Instead, I gazed at him, mesmerized. His eyes reflected surrender, and moments later, we found ourselves caught in a deeper, more passionate kiss. All inhibitions evaporated, banished to a realm of forgotten thoughts. From that moment on, all boundaries between us disappeared, we rushed into each other's arms. As the days passed, our home transformed into a private sanctuary, a place where fears and reservations dare not intrude. Each time he entered the room, his intense gaze sent my heart racing. I felt his every breath and every possessive touch as if he sought to imprint himself upon my soul. Initially, the nervousness lingered, a shadow of doubt hovering over us, but gradually, the overwhelming passion we shared consumed those worries, leaving no room for regret. Our relationship became a whirlwind of emotions, where every encounter offered an escape from reality. He had a way of making me forget the world, lifting me to heights of pleasure and intensity one had never known. The house, once a quiet retreat, now pulsed with the fervor of our shared experiences. Days melted into weeks, and each afternoon I found myself waiting for his arrival. The soft sunlight streamed through the windows, each ray igniting my anticipation. Every time I heard his footsteps drawing near, my heart raced with excitement. In those stolen morning moments, we exchanged glances brimming with unspoken understanding, a bond that transcended words. I was in too deep, lost in a love that felt impossible to resist. I couldn't turn back, no matter how hard I tried. It unfolded like a dream, each embrace defying the passage of time. Approaching the end of my college years, everything beyond the walls of that house faded, leaving just the two of us and the secrets we burned to keep. Yet now, reflecting on those days, I wonder if I can ever return to the life I once cherished. The peaceful existence I held dear has been swept away, replaced by a turbulent sea of emotions and memories. I often question what was right, what was wrong, and whether I can regain that simplicity and clarity. There lingers a weight, a truth I wish I had understood before stepping into that storm. So here's my advice: don't allow fleeting temptations to disrupt your life, no matter their source or the allure they present. Momentary pleasures may feel exhilarating, but they often come at a price far greater than you can imagine: your peace of mind, stability, and future. When faced with the crossroads of reason and emotion, consider if it's worth sacrificing the values you've built for something fleeting. Cherish your relationships, and don't let momentary passions blind you to the long term. When confronted with major decisions, reflect on the lasting consequences. True relationships are grounded in trust, loyalty, and sincerity. Each choice carries weight, and grappling with a guilty conscience can be one of life's greatest burdens. Think of those around you, those who love you, those you could hurt, and yourself. Don't trade your future or peace of mind for a fleeting moment of indulgence. Emotions are powerful and beautiful, yet they can lead you astray if not approached with caution. Remain clear-headed and focused on what truly matters. Remember, love, trust, and peace are treasures worth protecting above all else.